Imagine this: a luxury hotel suite, the kind where the sheets are silk, the champagne is always chilled, and secrets are buried deep beneath the plush carpet. It's a place where the rich and powerful come to escape, to indulge, and sometimes to hide. But what happens when two worlds collide in the most unexpected way? What happens when a chambermaid, invisible to the elite, catches the eye of a wealthy guest who seems to have it all? And what happens when that fleeting glance turns into something far more dangerous, far more forbidden? This is not just a story of passion, it's a story of power, deception, and the choices that can change lives forever. If you've ever wondered what goes on behind the closed doors of a five-star hotel, if you've ever been curious about the lives of those who serve and those who are served, then you're in the right place. Because today, I'm going to take you inside a world where nothing is as it seems, where every smile hides a secret, and every touch could be a lie. By the end of this video, you'll get the answers you've been searching for: answers about love, about lust, and about the price we pay for both. But be warned, once you step into this world, you might never look at a luxury suite or the people inside it the same way again. Let's start with the chambermaid, Maria. She's young, hardworking, and used to being overlooked. To the guests at the hotel, she's just another face in the background, someone who makes their beds and leaves fresh towels. But Maria has dreams, big dreams of a life beyond the hotel. A life where she's not just a servant, but someone who matters. And then there's him, the wealthy guest. Let's call him Mr. Blackwood. He's handsome, mysterious, and dripping with money. He's the kind of man who walks into a room and commands attention without saying a word. But what is he hiding? Why does he spend so much time alone in his suite? And why does he seem so drawn to Maria, the one person who's supposed to be invisible? From the moment their eyes meet, something shifts. It's subtle at first, a lingering glance, a brush of hands as she hands him his room key. But soon it becomes something more. Something electric. Something dangerous. Because in a world where power dynamics are everything, where the rich get what they want and the poor are left to pick up the pieces, an affair like this can't possibly end well. Or can it? As the days turn into weeks, Maria finds herself drawn deeper into Mr. Blackwood's world. He showers her with gifts, takes her to places she's only ever dreamed of, and makes her feel like she's the most important person in the room. But there's a darkness lurking beneath the surface. A darkness that Maria can't quite put her finger on. Who is Mr. Blackwood, really? What does he want from her? And why does she feel like she's playing a game she doesn't fully understand? The tension builds with every stolen moment, every whispered conversation, every secret rendezvous in the luxury suite. But just when Maria thinks she has it all figured out, just when she thinks she's finally found the happiness she's been searching for, something happens. Something that changes everything. I'm not going to spoil it for you, not yet. But I will say this: the answers you're looking for, the truth behind this illicit passion is coming. And trust me, it's not what you expect. So, if you're ready to dive into a story that will keep you on the edge of your seat, a story that will make you question everything you thought you knew about love, power, and desire, then keep watching. Because this is just the beginning. But before we go any further, let me ask you this: have you ever been in a situation where you felt like you were in over your head? Where the lines between right and wrong, between love and lust, were so blurred that you couldn't tell which way was up? If so, then you're going to relate to Maria in ways you never imagined. And if not, well, you're about to get a front row seat to a story that will leave you questioning everything. So grab a drink, get comfortable, and let's dive into the world of the chambermaid and the wealthy guest. Because trust me, you're not going to want to miss what happens next. But here's the thing: this story isn't just about Maria and Mr. Blackwood. It's about all of us. It's about the choices we make, the risks we take, and the consequences we face. It's about the fine line between love and obsession, between desire and destruction. And it's about the secrets we keep, even from ourselves. So, what do you think happens next? Does Maria get her happily ever after? Or does Mr. Blackwood's dark side finally come to light? Stick around because the answers are coming. And trust me, you're not going to want to miss this. But before we go any further, let me ask you this. What would you do if you were in Maria's shoes? Would you risk it all for a chance at love? Or would you walk away knowing that some things are too good to be true? Think about it as we dive deeper into this story. Because by the end of this video, you might just find yourself questioning what you would do in her place. So, are you ready to uncover the truth? Are you ready to step into the luxury suite and see what really happens behind closed doors? Then keep watching, because this is just the beginning of a story that will leave you breathless. But here's the twist. Just when you think you've got it all figured out, just when you think you know how this story ends, something happens. Something that changes everything. And that's where we'll leave you on the edge of your seat, desperate to know what happens next. So, what do you think? Are you ready to find out the truth? Or are you too afraid to see how this story ends? Either way, you're not going to want to miss what happens next. So, stay tuned because the answers you've been searching for are just around the corner. But before we go, let me leave you with this. Sometimes, the most dangerous secrets are the ones we keep from ourselves. And sometimes, the most forbidden passions are the ones that change us forever. So, what do you think happens next? Stick around because the truth is about to be revealed. And trust me, you're not going to want to miss it. This introduction is designed to hook your audience from the very first sentence, keeping them engaged with a mix of mystery, emotion, and psychological connection. By addressing the viewer directly and posing questions that resonate with their own experiences, you create a personal bond that encourages them to stay until the end. The cliffhanger ensures they'll be eager to watch the next part, while the use of trending keywords like forbidden love, luxury suite, and dangerous secrets helps optimize the video for YouTube search. Maria's life before the hotel was far from glamorous. Growing up in a small town where opportunities were as scarce as the rain in a drought, she had always dreamed of something more. Her mother worked double shifts at a diner. Her father was a ghost of a man who drifted in and out of their lives, and Maria had learned early on that if she wanted to escape, she'd have to do it on her own. The job at the luxury hotel was supposed to be a stepping stone, a way to save enough money to start over somewhere new. But the longer she worked there, the more she realized how easy it was to get lost in the opulence, to forget who she was and where she came from. The hotel was a world unto itself, a place where the rich came to play and the staff were expected to be invisible. Maria had mastered the art of blending in, of moving through the halls like a shadow, until the day Mr. Blackwood checked in. From the moment he arrived, he was different. He didn't treat her like she was beneath him, didn't ignore her like the other guests did. He noticed her, and not just in the way most men noticed a pretty face. He seemed to see her, really see her. It started with small things, a smile when she brought him fresh towels, a thank you that sounded genuine, not perfunctory. Then came the conversations. At first, they were brief, polite exchanges about the weather or the city. But soon, they grew longer, more personal. He asked about her dreams, her life outside the hotel. And Maria, who had spent so long being invisible, found herself opening up to him in ways she never had with anyone else. But as much as she tried to convince herself that this was just a harmless flirtation, a way to pass the time, she couldn't ignore the warning bells in the back of her mind. There was something about Mr. Blackwood that didn't add up. He was charming, yes, but there was a darkness in his eyes that she couldn't quite place. He never talked about his family, his past, or why he was staying at the hotel for weeks on end. And then there were the late-night phone calls, the hushed conversations that stopped the moment she entered the room. Maria told herself it was none of her business, that she was just a chambermaid, not a detective. But the more time she spent with him, the harder it became to ignore the feeling that something was off. Meanwhile, the hotel itself seemed to be hiding secrets of its own. There were rumors among the staff about illegal dealings in the penthouse, about guests who paid in cash and left in the middle of the night. Maria had always dismissed these stories as gossip, the kind of thing bored employees made up to pass the time. But now, she wasn't so sure. One night, while cleaning a suite on the top floor, she found a crumpled piece of paper in the trash. It was a receipt for a wire transfer, the amount so large it made her head spin. The name on the receipt wasn't Mr. Blackwood's, but it was someone she recognized, a powerful businessman who had been in the news recently for all the wrong reasons. Maria didn't know what to make of it, but she couldn't shake the feeling that it was connected to Mr. Blackwood somehow. As the days went on, Maria found herself caught in a web of secrets and lies. On one hand, there was Mr. Blackwood, who continued to shower her with attention and gifts, making her feel like she was the most important person in the world. On the other hand, there was the growing sense of unease, the feeling that she was being pulled into something far bigger and more dangerous than she could handle. She tried to distance herself, to focus on her work and her dreams of a better life. But every time she thought she could walk away, he would do something to pull her back in a lingering touch, a whispered promise, a look that made her heart race. And then there was Javier, the hotel security guard, who had always been kind to Maria. He was the one who had warned her about getting too close to the guests, who had told her that the hotel was a place where people came to hide their sins. At first, Maria had brushed off his advice, thinking he was just jealous or overprotective. But now, she wasn't so sure. Javier had started acting strangely, watching her with a worried expression whenever she passed by. One night, he pulled her aside and told her to be careful, that not everything was as it seemed. When she asked him what he meant, he just shook his head and walked away, leaving her more confused than ever. The tension continued to build, both in Maria's personal life and within the walls of the hotel. Guests whispered in corners, staff members exchanged knowing glances, and the air seemed to hum with the energy of secrets waiting to be uncovered. Maria felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff, one wrong step away from falling into the abyss. But even as her instincts screamed at her to run, she couldn't bring herself to leave. There was something about Mr. Blackwood, something that made her feel alive in a way she never had before. And despite the warning signs, despite the growing sense of danger, she couldn't shake the feeling that he was worth the risk. But then, one night, everything changed. Maria was cleaning Mr. Blackwood's suite when she found something she wasn't supposed to see, a folder filled with documents, photos, and names she didn't recognize. At first, she told herself it was nothing, just business papers or personal files. But as she flipped through the pages, her heart began to race. There were bank statements, surveillance photos, and notes written in a code she couldn't decipher. And then she saw a photo of herself, taken from a distance, with a note scribbled in the margin. "Keep her close. She knows too much." Maria's hands trembled as she dropped the folder, her mind racing with questions. What did Mr. Blackwood want with her? What did he think she knew? And most importantly, what was she going to do now? She knew she should leave, should run as far away as she could. But something stopped her, a mix of curiosity, fear, and something else she couldn't quite name. She had come too far to turn back now. Whatever was happening, whatever secrets Mr. Blackwood was hiding, she needed to know the truth, even if it destroyed her. As she stood there, staring at the folder on the floor, she heard the sound of a key turning in the lock. Her heart stopped as the door began to open, and she realized she was out of time. Mr. Blackwood was back, and he wasn't alone. Maria's mind raced as she tried to think of a way out, but it was too late. The door swung open, and there he was, standing in the doorway with a look on his face that sent a chill down her spine. Behind him stood two men she had never seen before, their expressions cold and unreadable. "Maria," Mr. Blackwood said, his voice smooth but with an edge she had never heard before. "We need to talk." The room seemed to close in around her as she realized there was no escape. Whatever was about to happen, whatever secrets were about to be revealed, there was no turning back now. The game had changed, and Maria was no longer just a player, she was the prize. But as she looked into Mr. Blackwood's eyes, she couldn't help but wonder, was this the man she had fallen for? Or was he someone else entirely? And more importantly, would she survive long enough to find out? The tension in the room was palpable, the air thick with unspoken words and hidden threats. Maria knew that whatever happened next would change her life forever. But as she stood there, caught between fear and desire, she realized that she had already made her choice. She was in too deep to walk away now. Whatever secrets Mr. Blackwood was hiding, whatever danger lay ahead, she was ready to face it. Because sometimes the most forbidden passions are the ones that change us forever. And sometimes they're the ones that destroy us. But as the door closed behind her, trapping her in the suite with Mr. Blackwood and his mysterious companions, Maria couldn't help but wonder. Was this the beginning of something beautiful, or the end of everything she had ever known? The answer she knew was coming. And it was going to change everything. So, what do you think happens next? Does Maria uncover the truth about Mr. Blackwood, or does she become another victim of his dangerous game? Stick around, because the answers are coming. And trust me, you're not going to want to miss this. But before we go any further, let me ask you this. What would you do if you were in Maria's shoes? Would you stay and fight for the truth, or would you run and never look back? Think about it as we dive deeper into this story. Because by the end of this video, you might just find yourself questioning what you would do in her place. So, are you ready to uncover the truth? Are you ready to step into the luxury suite and see what really happens behind closed doors? Then keep watching. Because this is just the beginning of a story that will leave you breathless. But here's the twist. Just when you think you've got it all figured out, just when you think you know how this story ends, something happens. Something that changes everything. And that's where we'll leave you on the edge of your seat, desperate to know what happens next. So what do you think? Are you ready to find out the truth? Or are you too afraid to see how this story ends? Either way, you're not going to want to miss what happens next. So, stay tuned because the answers you've been searching for are just around the corner. But before we go, let me leave you with this sometimes. The most dangerous secrets are the ones we keep from ourselves. And sometimes the most forbidden passions are the ones that change us forever. So, what do you think happens next? Stick around because the truth is about to be revealed. And trust me, you're not going to want to miss it. Maria's heart pounded as Mr. Blackwood stepped further into the suite, his eyes locked on hers with an intensity that made her skin crawl. The two men behind him lingered near the door, their presence like a silent threat. She glanced at the folder on the floor, the incriminating documents scattered like pieces of a puzzle she couldn't quite put together. Mr. Blackwood followed her gaze, his expression unreadable. For a moment, the room was silent, the tension so thick it felt like the walls were closing in. Then he spoke, his voice calm but laced with something darker. "Maria," he said, his tone almost gentle. "You shouldn't have seen that." Her mind raced, trying to piece together what was happening. Was this about the folder? The photos? The note about her? She wanted to demand answers, to scream at him for lying to her, for pulling her into whatever mess he was involved in. But the words caught in her throat as he took another step closer, his presence overwhelming. "You're in over your head," he continued, his voice softening as if he genuinely cared. "But it doesn't have to be this way. I can protect you, Maria. But you need to trust me." Trust him? The man who had been lying to her from the start? The man who had a folder filled with surveillance photos and cryptic notes? Maria's instincts screamed at her to run, to get as far away from him as possible. But something in his eyes, something she couldn't quite place, made her hesitate. Was it fear? Regret? Or was it just another manipulation, another way to keep her under his control? She didn't know. And that uncertainty was what kept her rooted to the spot, her mind spinning with questions she couldn't answer. Before she could respond, one of the men by the door cleared his throat, breaking the tense silence. "We don't have time for this," he said, his voice cold and impatient. "If she knows too much, we need to deal with it. Now." Maria's blood ran cold at his words. Deal with it? What did that mean? Her eyes darted to Mr. Blackwood, searching for some sign that this was all a misunderstanding, that he wasn't the monster he seemed to be. But his expression was unreadable, his gaze fixed on her as if he were weighing his options. For a moment, she thought he might defend her, might tell the men to back off. But then he sighed, running a hand through his hair in a gesture that felt almost defeated. "Maria," he said quietly, "I'm sorry." "Sorry?" The word echoed in her mind, sending a wave of panic through her. Sorry for what? For lying to her? For putting her in danger? Or for what was about to happen next? She didn't have time to ask. The two men were already moving toward her, their expressions grim. Maria's instincts kicked in, and she bolted for the door, her heart pounding in her chest. But they were faster, blocking her path before she could even reach the threshold. She stumbled back, her mind racing as she tried to think of a way out. And then, just as one of the men reached for her, the door burst open. Javier stood in the doorway, his face a mask of fury as he took in the scene. "What the hell is going on?" "Here," he demanded, his voice booming through the suite. For a moment, everyone froze, the tension in the room reaching a breaking point. Maria's eyes met Javier's, and she saw something in his gaze that made her heart skip a beat: determination, protectiveness, and something else she couldn't quite name. Mr. Blackwood recovered first, his calm demeanor slipping as he turned to Javier. "This doesn't concern you," he said, his voice tight with barely concealed anger. "Leave. Now." But Javier didn't budge. Instead, he stepped further into the room, his eyes never leaving Maria's. "It concerns me if you're threatening one of my coworkers," he said, his tone firm. "And trust me, you don't want to mess with me." The room seemed to hold its breath as the two men faced off, the tension between them crackling like a live wire. Maria didn't know what to do, her mind spinning as she tried to process what was happening. Javier had always been kind to her, but she had never expected him to step in like this, to risk his job or worse for her. And yet, here he was standing between her and whatever danger Mr. Blackwood and his associates represented. But just as the situation seemed poised to explode, Mr. Blackwood did something unexpected. He laughed. It was a low, humorless sound that sent a chill down Maria's spine. "You think you can stop me?" he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "You're just a security guard. You have no idea what you're dealing with." Javier didn't flinch. "Maybe not," he said, his voice steady. "But I know enough to know you're not as untouchable as you think you are." The words hung in the air, a challenge and a threat all at once. Maria's eyes darted between the two men, her heart pounding as she tried to anticipate what would happen next. Would Mr. Blackwood back down? Or would this escalate into something far worse? She didn't have to wait long for an answer. With a sharp nod from Mr. Blackwood, the two men by the door moved toward Javier, their intentions clear. Maria's breath caught in her throat as she realized what was about to happen. But before they could reach him, Javier pulled something from his pocket, a small, sleek device that looked like a phone but wasn't. He pressed a button, and the room was suddenly filled with the sound of sirens, distant but growing louder by the second. Mr. Blackwood's calm facade shattered, his eyes widening in alarm. "What did you do?" he demanded, his voice rising for the first time. Javier didn't answer. Instead, he grabbed Maria's arm and pulled her toward the door, his grip firm but not painful. "We need to go," he said, his voice urgent. "Now." Maria didn't argue. She let him lead her out of the suite, her mind reeling as they raced down the hallway. Behind them, she could hear Mr. Blackwood shouting, his voice filled with rage. But she didn't look back. She couldn't. All she could think about was getting away, about finding somewhere safe where she could finally breathe. But as they reached the elevator, Javier stopped, his expression grim. "This isn't over," he said, his voice low. "He's not going to let this go. And neither are the people he works for." Maria's stomach churned at his words. The people he works for? What did that mean? Who was Mr. Blackwood, really? And what had she gotten herself into? She wanted to ask, to demand answers, but the look in Javier's eyes stopped her. There was something there, something he wasn't telling her. And she had a feeling that whatever it was bigger than she could have ever imagined. As the elevator doors closed behind them, Maria felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her. She had thought she was falling in love, thought she had found something real with Mr. Blackwood. But now, she wasn't sure of anything. All she knew was that her life had changed forever and there was no going back. But as the elevator descended, one question burned in her mind. What happens next? The stakes had never been higher, the danger never more real. And as Maria stood there, her heart racing and her mind spinning, she realized that this was just the beginning. The truth was out there waiting to be uncovered. But at what cost? So, what do you think happens next? Does Maria find a way to escape Mr. Blackwood's dangerous world? Or does she get pulled even deeper into the web of lies and deceit? Stick around because the answers are coming. And trust me, you're not going to want to miss this. But before we go any further, let me ask you this. What would you do if you were in Maria's shoes? Would you trust Javier or would you try to handle this on your own? Think about it as we dive deeper into this story. Because by the end of this video, you might just find yourself questioning what you would do in her place. So, are you ready to uncover the truth? Are you ready to step into the luxury suite and see what really happens behind closed doors? Then keep watching. Because this is just the beginning of a story that will leave you breathless. But here's the twist. Just when you think you've got it all figured out, just when you think you know how this story ends, something happens. Something that changes everything. And that's where we'll leave you on the edge of your seat, desperate to know what happens next. So, what do you think? Are you ready to find out the truth? Or are you too afraid to see how this story ends? Either way, you're not going to want to miss what happens next. So, stay tuned because the answers you've been searching for are just around the corner. But before we go, let me leave you with this sometimes. The most dangerous secrets are the ones we keep from ourselves. And sometimes, the most forbidden passions are the ones that change us forever. So, what do you think happens next? Stick around because the truth is about to be revealed. And trust me, you're not going to want to miss it. The elevator doors slid open, and Maria and Javier stepped into the chaos of the hotel lobby. Police officers were everywhere, their radios crackling with urgent chatter as guests and staff alike looked on in confusion. Maria's heart raced as she tried to process what was happening. Had Javier called the police? Was this his way of protecting her? She glanced at him, but his expression was unreadable, his focus entirely on getting her out of the building safely. They moved quickly through the crowd, Javier's hand still gripping her arm as he led her toward the service entrance. But just as they reached the door, a voice stopped them in their tracks. Maria! She turned to see Mr. Blackwood striding toward them, his face a mask of fury. The two men from the suite were close behind, their eyes scanning the room as if looking for an escape route. Maria's breath caught in her throat as she realized they were trapped. The police were closing in, but so was Mr. Blackwood, and the look in his eyes told her he wasn't going to let her go without a fight. Javier stepped in front of her, shielding her from Mr. Blackwood's gaze. It's over, he said, his voice steady but firm. The police are here. You're done. But Mr. Blackwood just smiled, a cold, calculating smile that sent a shiver down Maria's spine. You think this is over? He said, his voice dripping with disdain. You have no idea what you've just walked into. Before anyone could react, one of the men behind Mr. Blackwood pulled something from his jacket, a gun. The lobby erupted into chaos as guests screamed and dove for cover, the police shouting for everyone to get down. Maria froze, her eyes locked on the weapon as her mind raced. This couldn't be happening. This wasn't real. But the cold, hard reality of the situation was impossible to ignore. Javier acted quickly, pushing Maria behind him as he faced the armed man. Drop it! He shouted, his voice cutting through the noise. You're not getting out of here. But the man didn't listen. Instead, he raised the gun, his finger tightening on the trigger. Maria's heart stopped as she realized what was about to happen. But before the man could fire, a shot rang out not from him, but from somewhere else in the room. The armed man crumpled to the ground, the gun slipping from his hand as the police moved in. Maria's eyes darted around the room, trying to make sense of what had just happened. And then she saw him, a man in a suit, holding a gun with the calm precision of someone who had done this before. It wasn't until he lowered the weapon and turned to face her that she realized who he was. "Dad?" The word slipped out before she could stop it, her voice trembling with shock and disbelief. The man in the suit, her father, the ghost who had drifted in and out of her life for years, nodded, his expression grim but determined. "Maria," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "We need to go. Now." She couldn't move, couldn't think. Her father was here? After all these years? And he had just saved her life? It was too much to process, too much to take in. But Javier didn't give her time to think. He grabbed her arm and pulled her toward the door, her father falling into step beside them as they made their way out of the hotel. The cool night air hit her like a slap, jolting her back to reality. But the questions kept coming, each one more urgent than the last. What was her father doing here? How did he know Mr. Blackwood? And what had she gotten herself into? As they reached a waiting car, her father turned to her, his expression softening for the first time. "I know you have questions," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "And I'll answer them. But right now, we need to get you somewhere safe." Maria wanted to argue, to demand answers, but the exhaustion and adrenaline crashing through her system left her too drained to protest. She let Javier and her father guide her into the car, her mind spinning as they drove away from the hotel, away from the life she had known. Over the next few hours, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. Her father explained that he had been working undercover for years, infiltrating a powerful criminal organization that Mr. Blackwood was a part of. The hotel had been a front for their operations, a place where deals were made and secrets were buried. Maria's job there had put her in danger, but her father had been watching over her from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to take down the organization and keep her safe. It was a lot to take in, and Maria struggled to reconcile the man sitting in front of her with the father she had thought abandoned her. But as he spoke, she began to see the sacrifices he had made, the risks he had taken to protect her. And for the first time in years, she felt a glimmer of hope, a sense that maybe, just maybe, things could be different. But the story wasn't over yet. As the car pulled up to a safe house, Maria's father turned to her, his expression serious. "This isn't the end," he said. "The organization is bigger than we thought, and they're not going to stop just because we took down one of their operatives. You're still in danger, Maria. But I'm not going to let anything happen to you." "Not again." Maria nodded, her mind racing as she tried to process everything. She had thought she was falling in love with Mr. Blackwood, thought she had found something real. But now she realized that the world was far more complicated than she had ever imagined. And as she looked at her father, at the man who had risked everything to protect her, she knew that the choices she made next would define her future. The story of the chambermaid and the wealthy guest had taken a turn she never could have predicted. But as she stepped into the safe house, surrounded by people who cared about her, Maria realized that this wasn't just a story about danger and deceit. It was a story about family, about love, and about the lengths we go to protect the people we care about. And as the door closed behind her, Maria knew one thing for certain: her life would never be the same. So, what do you think happens next? Does Maria find a way to rebuild her life, or does the danger follow her wherever she goes? Stick around, because the answers are coming. And trust me, you're not going to want to miss this. But before we go any further, let me ask you this. What would you do if you were in Maria's shoes? Would you trust your father after all these years, or would you try to handle this on your own? Think about it as we dive deeper into this story. Because by the end of this video, you might just find yourself questioning what you would do in her place. So, are you ready to uncover the truth? Are you ready to step into the luxury suite and see what really happens behind closed doors? Then keep watching, because this is just the beginning of a story that will leave you breathless. But here's the twist. Just when you think you've got it all figured out, just when you think you know how this story ends, something happens. Something that changes everything. And that's where we'll leave you on the edge of your seat, desperate to know what happens next. So, what do you think? Are you ready to find out the truth? Or are you too afraid to see how this story ends? Either way, you're not going to want to miss what happens next. So, Stay tuned, because the answers you've been searching for are just around the corner. But before we go, let me leave you with this sometimes. The most dangerous secrets are the ones we keep from ourselves. And sometimes, the most forbidden passions are the ones that change us forever. So, what do you think happens next? Stick around because the truth is about to be revealed. And trust me, you're not going to want to miss it.